Did you know that in some UK cities, people are spending their salary just to keep a roof over their head? That's not saving for a holiday, not putting money aside for the future, just paying rent. And it's not just London anymore. Across the country, once affordable towns and cities have quietly crept up the unaffordability ladder. From historic university towns to scenic coastal getaways, places that used to be considered livable are now financial nightmares for the average person. But here's the kicker: some of the most unaffordable cities in the UK aren't even the biggest ones. In fact, our number one might seriously shock you. So what's really going on? Why are young professionals, families, and even students being priced out of cities they've lived in for generations? In this video, we're counting down the top 10 most unaffordable cities in the UK, based on housing costs, rent-to-income ratios, and real-life data. You'll see some expected names, but also a few curveballs that might leave you speechless. And hey, stick around till the end, because understanding where your city stands might just change the way you look at your future living plans. Let's dive in. Number 10, Birmingham. Birmingham, the UK's second largest city, known for its rich industrial heritage, multicultural buzz, and that iconic accent. But there's something else Brummies are starting to notice, and it's hitting their bank accounts hard. Birmingham has become one of the most unaffordable places to live in the UK, and it's not just because it's a big city. In recent years, Birmingham has undergone a major transformation. Billions have been poured into redevelopment projects, new transport links, luxury flats, and trendy commercial hubs. Sounds great on paper, right? But for locals, revival comes with a heavy price tag. The average monthly rent in Birmingham is now over £1,000 and climbing. Yet the median salary sits around £28,000 a year, meaning a huge chunk of income is swallowed up by rent alone. Worse still, demand is exploding, with the HS2 high-speed rail project making Birmingham more connected to London. Property investors have swooped in. New builds and high-rise flats are snapped up before locals even get a look in. And here's the twist: many of these new homes stay empty, owned by overseas buyers or priced too high for the average resident. So while the skyline grows taller, more people are forced into shared housing or pushed out to the outskirts. Birmingham's housing crisis is a classic case of regeneration without inclusion. A city rising in profile, but leaving many behind. So is it still worth living in the heart of the Midlands? That's a question more and more Brummies are starting. Birmingham's just number 10. Wait till you see what's coming next. Number 9, Brighton. Brighton, a charming seaside escape, famous for its pebble beach, creative vibe, and vibrant LGBTQ+ community. It's quirky, it's colourful, and it's cool, but it's also crushingly expensive to live in. Once seen as a laid-back alternative to London, Brighton has quickly become one of the priciest rental markets in the UK. Average monthly rent? Around £1,350 for a modest one-bedroom flat, and that's if you're lucky. The problem? Wages in Brighton haven't kept up. The city's job market leans heavily on hospitality, retail, and the arts, industries that typically pay below the national average. Combine that with high demand and a tight housing rent-to-income ratio that's dangerously steep. But here's where it gets worse. Brighton has become a hotspot for Londoners fleeing the capital. They bring with them higher salaries and buying power, which has pushed prices up even more, leaving locals scrambling. And with Brighton's growing reputation as a remote work paradise, demand has skyrocketed. Landlords are cashing in, renters are being squeezed out, and the once chilled-out coastal lifestyle now comes with a heavy financial toll. So yes, Brighton offers sea views, boho cafes, and artsy streets. But at what cost? Would you pay London prices to live by the sea? Or does it just feel unfair to the locals who grew up there? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is Brighton still worth the price? And don't forget, subscribe for more of UK cities. We've got even more surprises coming up in this countdown. Spoiler alert, number 4 might genuinely shock you. Number 8. Reading. Reading used to be a place where people went to escape the high prices of London. A commuter town, yes, but one with its own rhythm. Leafy suburbs, quiet evenings, and just a 25-minute train ride into the capital. It was the best of both worlds, until the world shifted. Today, Reading isn't just catching up with London prices, it's racing ahead in some areas. The once affordable town has turned into a property pressure cooker, with rents rising faster than local wages can keep up. A typical one-bedroom flat can now cost between £1,200 to £1,400 a month, and the price for being close to London is getting harder to justify. The twist, driving up demand, Reading has become a tech magnet. With major companies setting up headquarters nearby, salaries at the top have increased. But the cost of living has risen for everyone. The town centre is buzzing, business is booming. But for the average worker, especially those in non-tech roles, the money doesn't stretch far enough anymore. And while new apartments are being built, they're often marketed as luxury living. Modern, yes. Affordable? Not really. The people who made Reading what it is, the shop owners, the teachers, the baristas, they're being priced further and further out. Reading is no longer the quiet commuter town in London's shadow. It's now standing in its own spotlight. But that spotlight comes with a cost that many long-time residents never saw coming. Number 7. Oxford. Oxford, where dreaming spires meet cobbled streets and history whispers from every corner. It's a city that feels like a storybook come to life. But behind the romantic facade lies a harsh economic truth. Oxford is one of the least affordable cities in the UK. You'd think a city built around education would be a haven for young professionals, researchers and students. But in reality, the cost of living here is enough to make even tenured professors wince. The average house price in Oxford is over 12 times the average local salary. Renting isn't much better, with one-bedroom flats frequently going for £1,400 to £1,600 a month, and rising. For many, shared housing isn't just a student phase, it's a long-term necessity. Part of the problem lies in scarcity. Oxford is a small city with strict building regulations to preserve its historic beauty. But that means demand massively outpaces supply, and prices shoot up accordingly. The global appeal of Oxford University, and you've got intense competition from international students, academics, and investors, all bidding for a limited number of homes. What's more, many of the jobs within the city, especially in retail, food, or university support roles, don't offer salaries high enough to handle the rent. So while Oxford remains a symbol of intellect and achievement, living here can feel like an elite privilege, out of reach for many who help keep the city running. Beautiful? Yes. Brilliant? Certainly, but affordable? Not even close. Number 6. Edinburgh. Edinburgh looks like a city out of a postcard. Medieval castles, winding cobbled streets, dramatic hills, and views that make you stop and stare. But beneath all that charm lies a housing market that's quickly becoming unlivable for the average resident. Rents in Edinburgh have surged by over 14%, with some neighbourhoods seeing even sharper spikes. A one-bedroom flat in the city centre now often costs upwards of £1,300 a month, and even in outer areas like Leith or Gorgie, you're still looking at prices most people would have once called outrageous. So what's driving this climb? A mix of things. Edinburgh's booming tourism industry plays a huge role, especially during festival season. Many landlords now opt for short-term lets over long-term tenants, converting homes into Airbnbs that generate higher returns. That means fewer rental homes for locals and a brutal competition for what's left. Add in the student population, a thriving tech sector, and a high demand from young professionals, and you've got a housing market in overdrive. Yet salaries haven't kept up. especially in hospitality, arts, and public services, which many Edinburgh. And here's the irony. For a city so full of culture, history, and identity, it's slowly pricing out the very people who give it that soul. In Edinburgh, the skyline might still belong to the past, but the housing crisis, that's a very modern problem. Number 5. Bristol. Bristol has always had a certain magic. It's the kind of place where you'll find a Banksy around the corner, a music festival in the park, and someone launching a startup out of a shipping container. It's artsy, it's innovative, it's independent, and now it's seriously unaffordable. A few years ago, people moved to Bristol to get the London lifestyle without the London price tag. But that's changed, fast. Today, the average rent for a one-bedroom flat sits between £1,200 and £1,500, and house prices? They've jumped over 50% in the last 5 years. Meanwhile, the average salary in Bristol doesn't even come close to covering those costs without sacrifice. Here's the thing, Bristol is booming. The tech scene is growing, media companies are setting up shop, and the student population keeps expanding. That should be good news. But it's also putting a massive strain on housing. Demand is up, supply is tight, and prices are getting pushed higher and higher. And while the city thrives on its creative energy, the people behind that creativity, artists, musicians, cafe workers, students, are being priced out of their own neighbourhoods. Areas like Stokes Croft and Montpellier, once havens for the alternative crowd, are now lined with trendy developments and sky-high rents. It's the classic story of gentrification. The culture makes the city attractive, and suddenly the culture can't afford to stay. Bristol's still buzzing, but if you're not earning tech money, it might be buzzing just a little too loud for your budget. Number 4. St Albans. Now here's a name you might not have seen coming. St Albans. A picturesque cathedral city just north of London. Peaceful, historic, family-friendly. And, as it turns out, shockingly expensive. Despite its small size, St Albans has earned a reputation as one of the most unaffordable cities in the UK. In fact, when you compare average house prices to local earnings, it consistently ranks among the worst. So what's going on? Well, location plays a big role. St Albans sits comfortably within the London commuter belt. You can be at St Pancras in under 25 minutes, making it ideal for high-earner lifestyle without losing their city job. But that convenience comes at a cost. The average house price here is over £630,000, while the median salary for residents is around £40,000 to £45,000. That's a price-to-income ratio of nearly 14 to 1, well above the national average. Even rental prices are steep. A modest two-bedroom flat could easily set you back £1,600 to £1,800 per month. For many young professionals and families, it's just out of reach. What makes this all the more surprising is how understated St Albans is. It doesn't have the same buzz as London or Brighton, but the cost of living here is often higher. Quiet streets, good schools, historic charm. It's the perfect package if you can afford it. But for locals who've lived here for generations, that charm is starting to feel exclusive. It's not just about how much you earn anymore. It's about whether a place that never meant to be a luxury destination, but somehow became one. Number 3. Cambridge. Cambridge. Just saying the name brings to mind one of the world's most prestigious universities, punting along the River Cam and streets lined with centuries-old colleges. But beyond the ivy-covered walls and academic prestige lies a city where the cost of living has quietly spiraled out of control. Cambridge is undeniably beautiful, intellectual, and full of opportunity. But for the average resident, it's getting harder and harder to stay afloat. The average house price in Cambridge has soared past £580,000, and a one-bedroom flat to rent will likely cost between £1,300 and £1,600 per month. Add to that the rising cost of transport, groceries, and energy. Even a well-paid job doesn't stretch very far. The tech boom is partly to blame. Often dubbed Silicon Fen, Cambridge has attracted major tech firms and biotech companies. That's created high-paying jobs for some, but for everyone else, especially those working in education, hospitality, or public services, wages haven't kept up with the city's financial evolution. The demand for housing is relentless. Between students, academics, professionals, and investors, competition is fierce. And just like in Oxford, space is limited thanks to strict building regulations designed to preserve the city's historic charm. It's a city that thrives on knowledge, innovation, and discovery. Yet ironically, it's becoming inaccessible to many of the very people who give it life. Cambridge may look like a dream on the outside, but for those living paycheck to paycheck, it's a daily balancing act. When a place becomes globally, stops being locally livable. And Cambridge is a textbook case. Number 2. London. Let's be honest, no one is surprised to see London on this list. It's the city of ambition, opportunity, culture, and eye-watering living costs. London has always been expensive, but in recent years, it's moved from pricey to punishing. The average rent for a one-bedroom flat in the city is now over £2,000 per month, and in central zones, it's not unusual to see studios listed for £2,500 or more. That's just rent, before council tax, utilities, and transport. And speaking of transport, a monthly Zone 1 to 3 travel card will set you back nearly £200. Want to buy a home? You'll need to find a spare £600,000 to £800,000 depending on the borough. And even then, you might be settling for a shoebox. So how do people manage? Many don't. More and more Londoners forced into hour-long commutes from outer boroughs or neighbouring counties just to survive. For those who stay, flat sharing well into their 30s is now the norm, and saving for a deposit feels like an impossible dream. Despite all this, people still flock to London for work, for culture, for the chance to make it. The problem is, unless you're earning a tech salary, working in finance, or have generational wealth backing you, London often takes more than it gives. It's a world-class city with world-class prices. And while it offers endless possibilities, it demands serious sacrifice in return. Still, London isn't number one, so which UK city has somehow outpriced even the capital? Stay tuned. We're about to reveal the most unaffordable city in the entire country. Number 1. Winchester. Surprised? You're not alone. While London grabs all the headlines, it's Winchester, a quiet, historic cathedral city, and takes the crown as the most unaffordable city in the UK. At first glance, Winchester seems almost too peaceful to be a financial pressure zone. Quaint streets, charming cottages, countryside views, it looks like the setting of a classic British novel. But behind the postcard-perfect scenery is a housing market that's completely out of reach for most. According to recent data, the average house price in Winchester is over £650,000, while the average salary hovers around £45,000. That's a price-to-earnings ratio of over 14 to 1, the highest in the nation. Even renting is brutal. A two-bedroom home can cost upwards of £1,600 per month, and that's without. For a city of its size, that's staggering. So why is it so expensive? Winchester ticks a lot of boxes: top-rated schools, fast rail links to London, low crime rates, and timeless charm. It's the ideal choice for well-off families, commuters, and retirees looking to downsize. But that demand has turned Winchester into a city where wealth is the entry ticket. And unlike major cities, Winchester doesn't have the same supply of new builds or social housing. The market is tight, competition is fierce, and prices just keep climbing. So here it is, the UK's quietest city with the loudest price tag. A place that many dream of living in, but only a few can truly afford. Unaffordability isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's wrapped in beauty, history, and elegance. And Winchester is the perfect example of that. Which city could you actually afford to live there? Drop your thoughts in the comments like you're leaving a review for your hometown. If you found this eye-opening, check out our previous video on the most affordable cities in the UK. It might just give you a few new ideas. We pour hours of research, writing and editing into every video. So if you appreciate what we do, please consider supporting us with a simple click on that subscribe button. It's free for you, but it means everything to us.